Hi, welcome back to my channel and my series on the Racket programming language. Today we're getting back to basics. And what I mean by that is I'm now going to define the three functions cons, car, and cooter that define how you operate on the fundamental data structure in Scheme or Racket or Lisp, which is a list or X expression to be more precise. And I'm going to do so in a way that's going to lead us to some very interesting insights on what programs really are, in a sense. So let's get started with it right away, because it's not nearly as complex as you think it would be. So what we're doing here is that we can define a version of cons, car, and cooter by using closures. And closures are kind of another way of referring to a higher order function, which is a function that can be passed to or returned from a function. And the reason they call them closures is that in a sense, they must capture things about the environment in which they were defined. For example, here, when I return this function that takes in, by the way, if you look at what's going on here, this is a function that takes in a function, the selector is supposed to be a function, and applies it to two arguments, and it returns this function. It needs to remember what A and B are. And the fact that I've now captured A and B is very fundamental to why this works. Because in a sense, I have now stored it somewhere. And now that I've stored it, I can now put these things together by consing them up, right? So consing together these higher order closures and then navigating through them by doing the following. Remember that these closures are just a function that want to take in a higher order function that is applied to these two values, A and B. So car is very simply, given that closure, I create this lambda A and D and I return A. I want to just get the first version of this thing, right? C, the closure version of cooter, K cooter, C. I want to call that closure, again, handed a function that takes in two parameters, and we want to return the value of that second parameter. And lo and behold, if I run this, it does exactly what I expect. K car, cons, boo, foo, and bar is foo. K cooter, K cons, foo, and bar is bar. And if we go back to the very beginning, we know that now that we have these three fundamental types and that these indeed define what an S expression or a list is, well, we have now done what we set out to do, which is we now have a version of a list that is defined using closures. It's no longer tied to the built-in version of what Racket does. Now, what inspired this is this kind of concept is brought up in the second of two books that I'd like to introduce right now. The first book is called The Little Schemer. The second book is called The Seasoned Schemer. They are really worth buying, I would say, if you're really, really interested in programming languages. Of course, there's free versions out there. You can print your own. But they sit really nicely on your shelf. They have some wonderful illustrations that are lots of fun. And not only that, but they're not very big in terms of page count, but they are dense in terms of information density. These are the kind of things that you could expect to take a long time for certain types of chapters. And not only that, but you should give yourself the space to maybe take a very long time to really tackle all the stuff that's in a chapter and really have to kind of get into it. I would say, for example, me personally, when I first reviewed the chapter one, what's called the Y Combinator, that took me about 3 weeks to understand exactly what was going on. And that's nothing on the authors. It's that they are dedicated to introducing the scheme language in a way that's very precise, that builds on itself from first principles all the way up to ultimately where I'm going to talk about in a little bit in the season schemer. And so understanding the Y Combinator, which is a fundamental way of representing a recursion in a programming language that doesn't talk about how it's implemented. The Y Combinator is a very difficult thing to understand. And the chapter that does it to this day is often cited for people that if you need to understand the Y Combinator, this is one of the best explanations of why, and literally the chapter is called Why Works. So yeah, so I can't recommend it enough. And then the season schemer builds on top of this to introduce more ideas around mutability and set, as well as it introduces a notion of continuations, which I will talk about in some later videos. And then ultimately what it does is it brings this all together and it defines a version of the language which maps all the things that have been used in the books since then. And so what's done is you can now go back into the very beginning and use these things that you have defined to run the source in the book. What this is called is this is the notion of what's called a metacircular evaluator or metacircular interpreter. A metacircular evaluator is a program which can take a program, and for every feature in the program that it is evaluating, it is mapped into a feature into the language in which the evaluator itself is written in. Now, in reality, the host language usually has more features than the tiny language that people are doing, right? But in the general case, they are interchangeable, which means you can have the evaluator evaluate the evaluator, right? Again, it's a circle. You keep going down this as much as you'd like. And this is an example of what happens in programming languages and other programming languages. A lot of languages, when they talk about bootstrapping itself, what they've done is they've defined the compiler in a version of the language that they're compiling. And that's what's called bootstrapping. So the C compiler is written in C, for example. The Rust compiler can be written in Rust. The Lisp interpreter was written in Lisp. And famously, after they had bootstrapped it, because you have to eventually write the assembly version to get the first version of the Lisp, but the read evaluation print loop in the Lisp 1.5 interpreter is famously 5 lines of code, because Scheme, unlike these other languages in which you have to do so much in terms of parsing them and turning them to an abstract syntax tree, and then compiling that to some form that is ultimately run on a computer or run by a VM, what Racket and Lisp did is that it forsakes syntax to make it simple to show that programs are just data. A program's a list. The fundamental data structure in Lisp is a list, obviously. And so writing programs that reason about programs is just another day in the office. And the thing about that is that why this is really important is I think that really if you want to step to a really higher level of becoming a better programmer and working with programming languages, the best way to do that is to understand metaprogramming. When we're in computer science, we write programs about things to understand them. We write programs about algorithms and data structures. We don't just study relational databases, and the relational algebra and normal forms. We actually wrote databases or write programs that use the databases. The list goes on and on. And there's this exception because it's not very common in day-to-day practice to have to do this, but programs are just another thing about a data we can write programs on. And so Racket just makes that very easy to do and exposes the fundamental building blocks of what a programming language is. So it makes it much easier for someone to go off and take a look and see the syntax and how it's just a variation on a theme, become very proficient in a language by understanding the certain types of things and how it does certain types of stuff. Because ultimately you'll begin to see these things as variations on a theme. And you'll be able to collect all this history about programming languages. And so you start to see the connections between procedural imperative and object-oriented programming and logic programming over here and functional programming over here. And all these things, you can just kind of see them again as these variations. And a part of you can understand that how you could take very small versions of them and use them to write interpreters about them and how to reason about them. And that is what's going to get you to the next step. And, and not only that, but, recently it came out that TypeScript is now probably one of the most used programming languages overall on things like GitHub. And, and as you may be aware, TypeScript and JavaScript, which is what TypeScript kind of improves upon, was really just a badly written version of Scheme that was put together for a demo at Sun Microsystems. But that's what it was, is that a lot of the ideas behind it were borrowed from Scheme at the time. And the thing that changed, though, was that it was quickly they wanted syntax on it so it looked more like Java because they thought it'd be better marketing. And out of that, and to be perfectly blunt, given how little time they did, and not only that, but how really understanding how scheme works is different than just using it. We have a programming language that's got a lot of really fundamental, difficult issues with it. But, you know, if you really wanted to master and tame that kind of language, you'd be no better off than, you know, really engaging with this type of material, because you can see where the similarities are and where they fall apart. For example, you all know that, you know, if you look in JavaScript, we know that functions are really objects. Why are they objects? Why do you do that? Well, because they're higher order functions in JavaScript, because there's higher order functions in Scheme. Well, to do the closure bit, if you treat it as an object, and not only that, but an object is really just a hash table of keys and values, it turns out it's pretty simple to do closures that way, because you just insert the values into the object itself and capture it that way. So, and you know, it's not to say that Lisp does things differently than that. It has its own way of doing closures. Every language does that has higher order functions. But you can see that's what it was. Well, and then, oh, well, everything's kind of an object in TypeScript, or JavaScript, even though it really wasn't. Well, that makes this a little bit more simple, and that's all that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, and so now you get this language that can be really baffling to some people and can be overly flexible. You can kind of see where the history was and how it developed. I'm not personally saying that the underlying flaws of JavaScript doesn't mean that it ultimately needs to be replaced, but that's neither here or there. What you can do is you can just see it as another variation on a theme. And that goes on for all the other languages. So when someone comes to you and says like, well, can you do this Racket programming thing, or can you do this Elixir programming thing, or Python, or this and that? Can you be more confident saying, hey, like, if you really need a resource on that, I can feel comfortable that I can get up to speed as you need if you give me some more time to really do it, right? Where you could also be the programmer that never gets outside a single language because they never really learned a language from its fundamental concepts, because they never learned to manipulate programs as data, to reason about them like this. So it's one of those things where that's very, very useful. And it's kind of what this channel has kind of been building up to, is that now we've gotten to the point where we had enough there. We can now get back to, okay, let's revisit the beginnings here, really rethink things, and take a look about how you can think about a fundamental data structure in a completely different way. And in here, what we've done is we've implemented it in a very clever way by using this notion of a higher order function and the fact that it captures the values that it needs so that it can run. So moving on from this, I want to talk a little bit more now about what's kind of coming up. There'll be some more videos about this, but to kind of give you a little more a sense of what gets talked about in the Season Schemer book, for example, is it talks about the notion of mutability, and it introduces how you can basically come up with a mutable list as well. And in Lisp, by default, lists were mutable, and in Scheme and Racket, they're immutable. And so if you want a mutable list, you have to do this explicitly. And mutable lists are very interesting, because what you can do with an M list here is that you can given a mutable list, you have things like set the cooter and set the car. But this has some really, really interesting consequences. And I just want to point this here, but I'm going to start looking at the second part of the things I've had typed up here. So I will uncomment this really quickly. And I'll go ahead and comment these so we can really focus on what's getting spit out by the second part of the program. So again, in Racket, if I want a mutable list, I use it by doing mcons. And therefore there's an mcar and mcooter as well. But there's also set mcar and set mcooter for setting the car part of the cooter part of the list. So here's what I've done is I've created a list, which is basically a concept A, and then a concept B, and a C, right? And then what I've done is I said, I'm going to set the second part of the list. So this is the mcooter of that thing, to be this, the M list itself, right? This is perfectly valid. This is legal. But what I've done here, for those now that might be familiar from with algorithms and data structures and how they can be implemented using pointers or references, is I've created what's called a cyclic data structure. That basically this, navigating through this list, I will constantly loop back on itself. And I will show you this as the following. I will run the four things down here. And I'll go ahead and just mcar mlist, mcar the mlist mcar, mcooter. I've done this. There's literally, basically, I've taken the mcooter, the mcooter, the mcooter, and I'll just kind of, let's just keep it expanding this out for the mere, the sheer hubris of it. It keeps going. You can keep going through this list because it is circular. It goes back on itself. You'll go 2 steps in, A, B, and then back to the start. 2 steps in, A, B, back to the start. 2 steps in, A, B, back to the start. And you can do that as long as you possibly can stand. Now, again, it should be fairly obvious why Scheme went to immutable lists. While a list started out with mutable lists, is merely because of efficiency. Because it's much harder to not do it. Basically, mutable lists are very simple to do the way they were implemented initially. Immutable lists are much more tricky. You create more garbage, for example. So when the first versions of the list came out, they were mutable by default and stayed that way until Scheme came along and said, no, we're going to put our foot down and saying, no, they really need to be immutable because creating cycles like this causes problems. For example, all the patterns that we've had around lists about, oh, I'm going to recurse on them, can potentially go out the window. You now need to track where you've been to do this. So what I'm going to do, though, is it turns out there's probably a very clever way of being able to navigate these structures so that you remember where you've been, so to speak, so that you don't run into these cycles. And that feature is called, one of the parts of that feature that's used for that, as well as other things in general, that's introduced in the season schemer, is continuations. And continuations is going to be this whole series on this video because it's a complex concept that deserves more than just a 20-minute video. And the reason being is that continuations and the variations on it that are available in Racket, you can define any higher order control mechanism using continuations, or a couple of variations on them. And so anything like throw, yield, even async and await, you could ultimately do with this continuation idea and how it's applied. So it might take a while for those videos to get out because I need to dust off those parts of my brain and really make sure I understand it. And so looking forward to it, and hopefully you'll start seeing those videos soon and you'll find those really enjoyable as well. But anyway, thanks for watching and coming back to the beginning with me on this journey through the Racket programming language. And I'll see you in the next video. And of course, please, if you've been this far, just like and subscribe already.